Great! I'm trapped in a gigantic video game! At least I don't need any quarters.
You sure about that, Spidey? Released in arcades back in 1991, Spiderman the Video Game, yes, that is its actual full name, though I'll just be calling it Spiderman the Arcade Game for obvious reasons, stands out for a few interesting gameplay choices not often seen in games of the time, as well as a few other notable ideas and franchise firsts for our friendly neighborhood wall crawler. Though, if this is your first time hearing about this game, well, that's not too surprising, as it never saw a console release. And if you're wondering how I'm playing it now...
Don't tell Nintendo.
Actually, don't tell Sega, since they're the ones who made it. Though it does kind of beg the question, why hasn't this seen a release on one of their millions of collection packs?
Right. Don't tell Sony. For the love of God, don't tell Disney.
Though, feel free to tell Microsoft, as I'm sure at the moment, they just jump all over anything with Spidey's mug plastered on it. But, should you? Is this arcade game worth your time? And to answer that, I think it's best to start with the game's biggest standout feature of the time. You know, aside from being a Spider-Man game. During the arcade heydays, when it was quite literally surrounded by its competition. And this one dropped the same year as TMNT. Ouch. So this had better be a good feature. And thankfully, it is. It's that this game is a mashup between a side-scroller and a beat-em-up. A hybrid, if you will. And don't get confused, when I say hybrid, I don't mean like how some action games have RPG stat building sprinkled in, or anything like that. No, I mean that this game, as unsubtly as possible, switches between two completely different gameplay styles, complete with different combat, graphics, sort of, movement, and controls, mostly. And let me be clear, this isn't just some small bonus game or a gimmick mechanic either. Every stage has you flipping between these two modes at least twice, so half the game in one and half in the other. And this was a really good call on the developer's part, because it helps keep the game from growing stale, as many beat-em-ups tend to do. Unfortunately though, one good idea can only carry a game so far, especially when most everything else is pretty average at best, or downright annoying at worst. Such as one of the major common grounds that the two modes share, the audio. Ugh, my garbage senses are tingling. And that's because the music, like a few other problems we'll bring up later, comes off as lackluster and kinda half-assed. Like how two of the songs are actually ripped from another Sega arcade game called Quartet? Quartet? I want to say Quartet. 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 I don't know how to pronounce this. Still, way to phone it in, guys. And really, the rest of the songs don't exactly stand out much either. But to be fair, they're not bad. No, the real villain here has to be the sound effects. They are obnoxious, to say the least. Like the Green Goblin's laugh. Or the motors on this chopper. And my personal least favorite coming from these masked goons, both when they appear and when they die. Like, seriously, I can't even get enjoyment from killing them, or I guess squishing them out of existence. Death animations in this game are weird. Also, the sound effects completely drown out the music with just how many of them there are. And the sounds that aren't bad don't fare much better, with a lot of them sounding completely stock. Still, I have to give the game a few points for the surprisingly clear voice work in this one, especially in between the stages, because funny enough, these clips seem to completely ignore the fact that there are other playable characters aside from Spider-Man. Though, I can kind of speculate as to why that is.
Spider sense tingling, signaling danger. Trouble up ahead. Let's go, Spider-Man!
Though on that note, Spiderman the Arcade game is a 4-player co-op experience, and as such, is at its best when played with friends. Yeah, on my 10th birthday, my mom took me and 3 of my buddies to the arcade, gave us each $10, way more than we needed, and we took this game down. And being the birthday boy, obviously, I got to be Spidey. But aside from our favorite webhead, the other playable characters include the voluptuous Black Cat. And a cool piece of Marvel and gaming trivia, this was her first time as a playable character in a game. One of very few. Unlike Hawkeye here, who's surprisingly been in a number of games. Honestly, not too shabby for a guy whose superpower is the same as Robin Hood. And last, and certainly least, the Submariner. Shockingly, pun definitely intended, this is the only game he's been a playable character in, and I'm not too surprised about that. I doubt anyone other than hardcore Marvel fans would even really know who he is, since he hasn't even popped up in any of the movies. Yet.
Submariner, eat your heart out!
Though just think, Marvel's Aquaman, but with electric powers, so, you know, better. Though as far as this game is concerned, none of that really matters, since the characters almost all play exactly the same in both modes. We're not looking at a final fight scenario here where we have different speed and power classes. During the beat 'em up segments, all 4 characters share the same movesets, which most veterans will know isn't unusual. There's a standard punch combo, the staple jump kick, a second jump kick that lunges you forward, and I mean, I get that Spidey is web slinging here, totally in character, and Black Cat has her whip, but what is Hawkeye doing here? And how? Also, I need to mention that getting one kick to activate over the other can be pretty unreliable, and is seemingly based on the timing of the jump. Seemingly. Just like the jump kicks in Turtles in Time. Though not as good. But the major problem is the throws. When playing alone, it's not a big deal, but when playing with others, you know, the best way to play, you'll often find yourself throwing enemies into allies, thus making them into enemies, if you know what I mean. Doubly so if you're playing on an actual arcade machine and costing them money. And since the throws will pretty much just happen as part of the combo anyway, expect it to happen frequently. It's pretty unavoidable and a real problem. There are also the special attacks, which are the only mild differences between the characters. For the most part, they're all just ranged attacks, with Spider-Man having the best as it goes the farthest with the most spread. Gee, I guess it just pays to be the headliner. Though the other 3 can hit all around them, so it's not that bad. But none of those minor differences really come into play in the side-scroller sections. And speaking of, here, all 4 characters attack by shooting projectiles. I mean, unless the foe is like right on top of them. Black Cat might actually be the best in this mode, as her whip can hit again on its way back though. Otherwise, they all might as well be ripped straight out of the Spider-Man clone saga, because they're all basically the same. They can all jump the same heights, they all walk on walls, and they all struggle to drop through the floors, which can be pretty annoying, especially when trying to reach health packs. Which, interestingly enough, this game has, in spades. So yeah, if you're new to the arcade scene, one pretty common feature is that the developers want you to die. So that way you'll just keep pumping in more and more quarters. Which, I mean, this is how those games made money after all, so it does make sense. But it is a pretty nice change of pace when they actually hand out health in this game. Though, on the other hand, you're also always losing health. That's right. In this game, your health bar is a counter that is always ticking away. To your doom! Though it won't actually go from 1 to 0, so it can't technically kill you. And really, it drops so slowly that you'll hardly notice. But still. Though one nice thing is that when you use your special, which is only available in the brawler mode by the way, it eats away at your health, like it does in most beat 'em ups. But in this game, if your health is too low to pay the cost, well, you can still do it anyway. Spam it, in fact. One final stand. Yeah, take that, X-Men Arcade game. Though since it's a jump and attack button together instead of its own designated button, it is possible to flub it up, meaning you dead. But still, it's pretty sweet. And what's also pretty sweet has to be the graphics. I have always loved 90s arcade era sprites. They're just so large and colorful and detailed, and the Spider-Man arcade game is no exception, doing a great job of capturing the look of classic Marvel comics, especially with the more detailed brawler sprites. It almost feels like I'm playing the Fox Kids show. And the little word balloons that pop up mid-fight are a nice touch too. Though the side-scroller sprites aren't as good, but they're not bad either. They get the job done, even at that size, so no complaints here. Except for the animations, but mainly because they're just too few. In fact, this kind of ties into the game's one major problem, or problems depending on how you see it, and that is that the game is too easy or too simple. And I think that the real culprit here has to be the AI. It's far too basic, even for a beat 'em up, with all the enemies just boiling down to really guy that punches you and guy that punches you with longer reach. And this is really game breaking when we get to the bosses, because most only have 1 or 2 total animations that they use in a fight. I mean, just look at Duckhunt here, or Electro. They only do one thing. Most bosses are actually only a threat if the henchmen are present, and that's really just a numbers advantage. And sure, there can be cheap moments like in most arcade games, like with these gunners on side-scroller segments, or enemies that just punch you and never let you up. But the thing is, you could return the favor, including to the bosses. You know, I feel like it's a bit of an issue when I can cheese the bosses this easily. Yeah, screw challenge, right? I could pretty much beat this entire game by myself with just 250. Making it one of the easiest arcade games I've ever played, whether emulating or not. Plus, I'm pretty sure that some of the AI is just broken. I mean, come on, how do you make Venom, of all characters, suck? Don't remind me. Well, regardless, it absolutely says something about the overall quality of the game, which is that even at its best, this game is still a bit below average. Sure, there are some good qualities here. The graphics still hold up. I like the last stand feature with the special attacks. It's pretty cool that lesser known characters get some time to shine. And of course, the switching between brawler and side-scroller modes really does keep the game from getting repetitive. A feature that I would love to see in more games of this nature. I cannot stress enough at how good of an idea this gameplay mechanic is. But even so, I still find it pretty hard to recommend this game to anyone who isn't a retro arcade fan. And despite how simply grating the sound effects are, it all really just boils down to how lackluster the combat is. There's simply no challenge or depth to it at all, in either mode. And even when I play other arcade games with infinite lives, knowing that I can't technically lose, I still get a feeling of satisfaction when I take down a tough boss. But not here. It's just too easy. But with all that being said, I don't think it's a bad game. With a 45-minute to an hour runtime, this one might be a good choice if you want to introduce it to a young child or a non-gamer to the arcade scene, whether emulating or not. And of course, playing with friends can still be fun. But if you're a solo hero, and unless you are a hardcore fan or just looking to put another notch in your belt, I'd probably pass on this one. There are plenty of other great Spider-Man games worth your time. Hey webheads, it's your friendly neighborhood Spammer D again. And oh crap, what's that? My reviewer sense is tingling. It's telling me that you need to like and subscribe. And also hit that bell icon so you can keep up to date with all my future content. Wow, it's just like having your own Spidey sense. Only it's not nearly as cool or as useful. But you should still do it anyway. I'd appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching.